Welcome to A Gobbet of Pus. Number 17, Gross, a True Story, from September 23rd, 2008. Remember, if you like a gross story, go to iTunes and feed my ravenous ego with a stellar review. My children love stories about work, especially gross stories, and the grosser, the better. The schedule said my next patient had parasites. This is always a bad sign if you practice in Portland, Oregon. The Pacific Northwest is mostly parasite-free, and unless the patient has been traveling abroad lately, the patient is more likely to be crazy or, at a minimum, uninformed. There are other diagnoses on the schedule that give one pause: chronic Lyme, chronic fatigue, chronic Candida. You know in advance that the chance of a good doctor-patient interaction is slim. Walking in the room, the smell of garlic was overpowering. Sitting there was a slightly disheveled elderly man who, while we were talking, continually ate raw garlic cloves, one after the other, as if they were jelly beans. At least that's how I eat jelly beans. In the small, overly warm exam room, the smell was almost overpowering. Now, I like garlic. When I cook, I always triple the amount of garlic, or cinnamon for that matter, and one of my favorite recipes is chicken with 40 cloves of garlic. I thought there could never be too much garlic. Wrong. Talking with the patient revealed that the parasites floated in the air and would land on his skin, burrow in, and then travel through his body and finally come out of his nose. Yes, his nose. You may at this point guess where this is going. I asked how he knew if they were parasites, and he said he pulled them out of his nose. It was the garlic that kept the parasites at bay, forcing them to escape out his nose. I asked, very hesitantly, if he had a sample of the parasite, and he produced a large brown jar that rattled when he shook it. He unscrewed the lid and dumped out about 2 cups of dried boogers onto the exam table. Now, to my credit, I neither screamed nor puked. I explained to him that he did not have parasites and why. He did not believe me and left with his jar of dried parasites/boogers. I can eat garlic now and enjoyed it, but for a long while the smell of garlic made my stomach turn. The patient had delusions of parasitosis, not an uncommon problem for infectious disease doctors. Most doctors, when confronted with patients, do not have enough background in parasitology to recognize these parasites have a life cycle that makes no sense. When examined under the microscope, the parasites always look like clothing threads or non-specific organic detritus. So they often send the patients to me, both the patients and the pseudoparasites. The treatment of delusions of parasitosis is antipsychotics, which I have never had a patient agree to take, much less see a psychiatrist. There is no doubt the disease causes suffering, but getting the patient treated is problematic. The current popular incarnation of the syndrome is apparently Morgellons disease, an ID fixe that sure looks like delusions of parasitosis to these old bifocal eyes. Occasionally, it is not a delusional state that brings the patient in with a parasite, but someone who is misinterpreting the data. I once had a patient who thought he had passed a worm, but it was just an earthworm that had fallen out of his pants. He had been working in the garden and was relieved to know he was not infested with a parasite. At least, not with earthworms now. That will have to wait till he is post-mortem. The relevant article is Delusions of Parasitosis from Clinical Infectious Diseases 2007, volume 45. This ends this Gobbet o' Pus. Don't forget, write me a review on iTunes. My fragile yet ravenous ego demands it.